And we are back.
Just like that. We're back just like that. And we're moving now into our first segment for the morning and reintegrating prisoners into society. In with us is the Chief Executive Officer at the Kolbe Foundation, Virgilio Murillo. Sir, good morning.
Good morning.
And
good
welcome.
Morning.
It's nice to have you in.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, you know what? We're feeling that good breeze from over that side. That's what we're feeling here?
All right. Yeah, I guess. Even though when they called me yesterday, I never expected the call. But I guess you got to be prepared, right?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Like a good old scout.
And I like that you segue into be prepared, because that's one of the things that we try to do for our young men and women who are there at the Kolbe Foundation. Now, let's branch off into exactly the work of the Kolbe Foundation and what they're doing to try to revive our society with these folks.
Well, essentially, we have a mission that the end product really is to meaningfully rehabilitate offenders who have run amok of the law, and to let them reintegrate successfully, not just reintegrate, but to reintegrate them successfully within the society, within their communities, and most importantly, with their families. Because one of the things I think people need to realize is that when a person goes to prison, really his entire family is in prison with him or her. Let us look at situations where a mother goes to prison, she leaves her children behind. It is more of a sorrowful situation with respect to a mother than for a father. But nonetheless, they do leave their children on the outside to the mercy of the world, if you want to put it that way. And I think it's a very tough situation because anybody can take advantage of your children. Anybody can take advantage of your siblings, etc. And not being able to move and go and deal with the situation, or at least try and offer some kind of advice or help, I think that gets very frustrating. And this is one of the things we try to let the society know, that because some people, majority of society would want to be very punitive. They focus just on the punishment part. And really and truly, the sentence, or being in the prison, the incarceration itself, is really the punishment. It can't get worse than that.
The removal of
the
your
freedom.
Right.
Yeah. So when they come to the prison, our mission, our goal is really to offer them programs, whether it addresses their addiction, whatever that addiction is, or their behavior, or anger, whatever the case is. And eventually we try to teach them vocational skills so that when they come back into society, we know that there's a stigma that is going to follow them. We know that there's a stigma that is going to follow them. And there's the possibility that they will not be able to obtain employment with businesses, and you have to understand how the business feels too, especially if a guy had gone to prison for burglary or robbery. That's a crime of dishonesty. So it's kind of hard to gain back that trust from the business community. So you need to understand that. So what we try to do really is to equip them with skills so that they can produce things on their own. As a matter of fact, one of the essentials by United Nations standards is to make sure they are what you call productive citizens. And for you to be productive, you need to know something so that you don't have to rely on a job being offered to you.
Focusing on reintegration, I think is looking at one of the areas that we don't talk about very often. We think of, what happens when someone is in prison, what they have access to, how they're held, and your challenge is there. But let me just get some clarity. So how often or how many prisoners are released, let's say annually, for time served or parole?
All right, I was just looking at those numbers coincidentally, I guess, because we were working on a project. And over the last 3 years, for argument's sake, we've seen a total of 2,665 prisoners being discharged from the prison, either on parole, either on time served, remission, or whatever.
But what category? Because you also have where someone was on remand, and the case fell through. Technically, they weren't charged. They weren't serving time.
And those numbers I'm giving you, that 2,665, that's cumulative. Yes. And then when we look at who came back, we came up with a mere 234. In some instances, a few of them may have come back more than twice, or more than once, I should say.
Okay.
So when you use those basic numbers, you're looking at roughly a recidivism of roughly 9%.
Yeah.
I am saying that any stint a prisoner or a person has with the prison should have some kind of impact on them. And because that is how prison should work. That is what the prison should work towards.
Yeah.
So if you were accused, and at the end of the day it boils down that you were accused wrongfully or you were acquitted, well, so be it.
Yeah.
You can't focus on the mistake. You need to focus on the lesson learned. So.
Well, two things, because I was really interested in finding out the difference between the number of persons who've been released from remand versus those who served parole or served their time. Because I think the parole numbers are interesting as well as the remand. But I also think that one of the things that we don't discuss, and I always ask you about your recidivism rate for the very same reason. When we have a crime that takes place and a person is charged, they have such a long rap sheet that we often are told of, or even have had within our own files from previous reports. So it shows that these persons clearly are repeat offenders or repeatedly accused at the very least.
Sure.
So when you tell me that the recidivism rate is as low as 200, which is about 10%, right?
Yeah, roughly 10%.
Yeah. It doesn't seem to match what we have been reporting in the news. How do you explain that to somebody?
Well, one of the things you need to know is that I can only account for who gets caught and who gets sent to prison.
Yeah.
I really can't. I cannot speak to the numbers of those crimes or those offenders who go undetected or unarrested, if you want to put it that way. Suffice me to say, though, that we also watch our repeat offenders because certainly we don't want to run the facility in such a way that they feel like, it's time for a holiday. Let's go to prison. You know,
Or recruitment time.
Or that kind of stuff. So we try to make sure that whatever length of time they are sent to prison, it is spent trying to rehabilitate and trying to change their mindset. We do have over 200 persons on parole. If my memory serves me well, I think we're around 220 persons on parole currently. And these people have been doing very, very well as far as I am aware. As a matter of fact, the recent spate of burglaries and robberies that we've been seeing, for the ones that have come to prison, I can tell you with certainty that it is not these people who have left the prison, at least not in the recent, let's say, 2 to 3 years. Because one of the way we measure recidivism right now is we try to use 3 years worth of data. Because especially when it comes to repeat offenders, if repeat offenders manage to stay out of prison anywhere between, let's say, right up to 3 years then you could almost consider that person being successful. Because it means that something worked. One of the programs might be working for them, you know?
So your recidivism rate is based on whether or not they've been at Kolbe within the past 3 years.
That is.
So they could have been there 6 years ago.
Yeah, and you wouldn't consider that because most countries use 3 years.
Okay. Because it's almost like you've changed and then you fell back into crime.
Right, and then when you listen to their stories, man, like I tell you, there's this stigma that follows them.
Yeah, definitely.
And this is why the issue of reintegration is necessary. Just one more question about parole. Can you explain to us how one becomes eligible for parole? The parole program is actually relatively new in this country. And so talk to us about how long it's been rolled out and how people become eligible and the 200 plus people who've benefited from it.
Well, parole, I don't know that I should say parole is relatively new. I've been at the prison for the last 17 years and I know parole has been in existence since. What has happened in 2017, if I remember well, March of 2017, they passed what you call a separate parole act. What they did, they took out the whole issue of parole from out of the Prisons Act. And they made it an act by itself. Okay, so that happened in 2017, but it has always been around. And it has gone through a bunch of changes over time. At one point, you know, the laws were changed where a person who is serving less than 2 years becomes eligible for parole after he or she has served 1/3 of their sentence, of that sentence.
Okay.
And anybody who are doing over 2 years, or 2 years and more, I should say, became eligible after they have served 50%. That went through a little turmoil. The, you know, lawmakers and you know, the government pretty much looked at it differently, and they thought that you can't be eligible for parole after 1/3. So they pushed it to an outright 50%, and then again it changed, and it came right back to where it was. So today,
1/3.
So now we have a little change in the whole thing now, in the sense that you're back at the 1/3. However, there's what you call two level of offenses. There's what you call a lesser offender, and then there's what you call a serious offender. So a lesser offender, you're looking at somebody who's serving less than 2 years. A serious offender is somebody who is serving 2 years and more.
Okay.
So we're right back at square one, where the lesser offender becomes eligible after he or she has served 1/3 of their sentence, and the serious offender becomes eligible after they have served half. 50% of their sentence, right? And as per the law, you know, you have to, when you're deliberating, automatically they become eligible once that percentage has been passed. It is their right under the law. So whether my office put them up for parole or not, they have a right to make the application for parole.
Okay.
But it is really the prison's obligation to make sure they come up with the list every month of who
So
had
you make
reached
recommendations.
Well, not necessarily, but we put them on the list.
Okay.
And then remember, we sit at the parole board meeting every month, and we deliberate their cases.
Okay.
The director and the parole unit really just have to present their case, all the reports against them while they were in prison, whether they were good reports or bad reports. We need to present those to the parole board. The parole board is made up of 9 people.
Okay.
The chairman is Colonel George Lovell, retired. And of course, myself as the director for the prison, I sit on the board. And then there's members of the clergy, the judiciary, or the magistracy, I should say, the police, and even a psychiatrist
Okay.
is on board. So it's 9 people with varying expertise and skills, and they look at various things when they're determining parole. They're looking at the welfare, the safety of the society, of course, because that is first and foremost.
Yes, of course.
Then you're looking at the welfare of the prisoner, welfare in the sense that does he have a place to live? Does he have family support? Will he make it? Will he be able to make it on the outside? Those kinds of things. You're looking at recommendations made by the representative of the police. You're looking, even the judiciary, the magistrates, like I said, they get to weigh in. Of course, I will talk about their conduct, and we're going to look at their reports, whether they had taken programs while they were in prison, or whether they were breaking rules all along, and probably smuggling contraband, those kinds of things. So all of those things we look at, because at the end of the day, you don't want the guy to go out and then in a couple of months' time, he's back in prison.
He's back in prison.
Because that's not the idea.
So how often are they sensitized about the information? Because, and I'm saying this because you being in there, sitting down in there, you know, you want to know that there's hope. So how often do we tell you?
Well, I guess you're aware that the prison has a prison studio, right? A radio station.
Jeremiah 33.3.
Ah, you know it.
There, yeah.
You know it so well. All right, yeah, and that is one of our platforms that we use to keep prisoners up to date.
Yeah.
Even with what is happening out in society, because believe you me, these guys get to hear the news daily.
So they're seeing you now too.
They're seeing me, well, they're not seeing me now, but they will hear me tomorrow. Because we have audio, we don't have televisions.
Okay.
Some of them might look at me tomorrow evening, because we would get this kind of news a day late. Yeah, so it's like the good old days in PG, remember, John?
Oh, yes, man. You still
Used
get
to
next
get,
day.
used to be history, we
You
had
had,
a joke.
you had to rent cassette and all kind of thing to
Yes.
catch the boxing, remember?
But, you know, while we're on the topic of reintegrating them, when a prisoner gets to the Kolbe Foundation, we know that, of course, it is a tough situation. You know, you think about what you've done and why you've done it and what happens next. How receptive are they to wanting to change? At what point do we see this for them?
Well, I'll tell you, majority of them when they come to the prison for the first time, they're scared to death. Like I tell you, what we are seeing a lot these days with respect to these burglaries, these crimes that are happening recently, is brand new faces. Brand new faces. And like I keep saying, it is always between the ages of 18 to 25. It's young people. Young people who obviously got carried away.
Yeah.
I will tell you, most of them are very receptive and want to take the opportunity to reflect. They want to take the opportunity to try and see, hey, what am I going to do next time? Am I going to listen to my parents, whether it's a single parent or not? That kind of stuff. And some of them jump on the bandwagon, even if they're remanded, because recently we, since 2017, June, we came up with a program for the remanded prisoners, because back in the days, the remanded prisoners just sat there awaiting 23 hours a day in their cell doing nothing.
Yeah.
You know, so John Woods, like I tell you, he never liked that, so he came up with a building. He got donation from the States, from the Kolbe Foundation. We built the Remand Rehab Center, and that looks after the gang situation, anything pertaining to gang, anger management, those kinds of things. And today, the remanded prisoners, whatever little stint they have with the law and they come to prison, they have an opportunity to participate in a program. But for the most part, they are very receptive to answer your question.
Wow.
So we spoke of the possibility of parole, people who actually do serve their entire time and get released. And you said about 2,000 persons, including those who've been released from remand, are released back into society. What programs, this is where it gets challenging. We've had conversations with people before, right here on the show, that spoke of, you know, being released from remand or having actually spent time in jail and just not being able to get access to work. And that's one of the most frustrating situations for them. What type of programs exist after a person has been released from Kolbe?
Now, on the part of Kolbe, this is where we don't have much collaboration. I know we do have a few, I don't even want to call them halfway houses, but they are. I know their capacity is very limited. For argument's sake, there's Freedom House in Roaring Creek. I think the capacity for there is probably 8. And then we recently have Hedges that came on board. And I don't know what is their capacity, but they seem to have capacity for more than Roaring Creek Freedom House. Of course, there are other little, what you call halfway houses, I guess by private people. And yeah, so this is where Kolbe doesn't really have a facility to help transition.
These private entities, they would take in prisoners that have been released. Is there a cost associated? I mean, how does it work if there's no...
No, I don't know that.
Yeah.
I just know that there are prisoners who may express interest in going to Freedom House or going to Hedges. And then I know the people from these private entities would call the prison to sort of get some kind of background on the prisoner, whether it's advisable and what was his conduct like in prison, because they don't want them to be creating problems for their safe houses. Because those bad influences can affect the other residents, so to speak. But we really don't have a direct input in those things any at all.
So there's no structured program for any person who's released from Kolbe?
Not from our part.
And what about the parolees?
The parolees? Well, what we notice with the parolees, and like I tell you, one of the things the parole board try to ensure is that the parolee, before he's paroled, has that family support.
Has somewhere to live.
That's right. They have somewhere to live. They have a job, those kinds of things. So for the parolees, I think they're hanging in there. The reason they're not coming back really is because they have that support.
Because that's one of the criteria that you
That's one of the criteria we look
before.
for, right? And that's by law. One of the strange things, and now that you're asking it, it's coming to mind. I can't understand. You know, families tend to support their people when they come to prison. So I guess it's sort of the prodigal son type thing, no? And I'm saying that the same, you should see families struggling. I mean, catching the bus, paying a taxi, bringing in a plate of food, home-cooked food, depositing monies into the prisoner's account so he can, at least purchase things from the commissary, those kinds of things. And I believe that same effort they make, they could make it on the outside once these guys are out. Whether it happens or not is another story. But for the parolees, I can tell you that they are successfully, flying past their parole time and continue to remain successful.
Are there any other programs besides those that we've normally seen, like the Family Day? Because I think for anybody who have got time to sit down and reflect on the negative that they've caused, I think the rehabilitation time, sitting down with family, would give them that backing for them to want to change. So besides Family Day, which is held how often?
Well, each building gets at least 5 for the year.
Oh, 5 for the year. Is there any other program that would be family oriented, so they are able to not be far-fetched from family and given that ability to think or reflect with family besides a 5 days out of the year?
Well, I would say the visits, because remember, if a family can visit, if a mother can visit her son 7 days a week,
she's able to.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Because you have visitation hours every day.
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day.
And visitation
Sunday
hours
to Sunday.
How long?
It's half hour.
Yeah.
Half hour for the
Yeah.
day.
So if you want to maintain, because the push from our side really is to try and maintain that family tie, that family bond.
Yeah.
And what better way to do it than to allow visits as often as possible? Because I'll tell you what, when we took over the prison in 2002, I will let you know, the law really talks about 1 visit for a senior prisoner. I'm talking about an adult prisoner, once every 8 weeks. 1 visit every 8 weeks. And for the youngsters, the young prisoner under 18s, they allow them 1 visit every 4 weeks. That is as per the law. And that wasn't cutting it.
Yeah.
There were lots of families being broken up because of that.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things.
There's something you said that kind of is stuck in my mind, and I wanted to be able to bring it out. You said the faces that you're seeing recently from the burglaries, and they're pretty brazen burglaries that we've seen. The security cameras, no mask, armed robberies that are taking place. You're seeing the new faces and also younger persons.
Most of them, new faces. Most. We're not seeing the guys that we are usually used to seeing.
Yeah. That's very troubling. And I think what it shows me, or what it indicates to me, is that we need to pay attention even more to what happens after these persons, whether they're charged and actually serve time or whatever happens, that they can be reintegrated back into society. We're saying we have a new crop of people.
Yeah.
What do you think? And I'm sure it has to be a frustration from your part. You see these young men probably have their own transformation. Maybe not as significant as an outsider may see it, but individually you see them come in scared, sometimes aggressive. They start to make their own strides in getting themselves educated, picking up a skill, earn the right to be released, and then they struggle when they're on the outside. What do you think needs to be put in place?
Well, like I tell you, certainly parenting has a lot to do with why these little guys fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
I said the last time that the education system needs to sort of impose on them that they must be educated at least up to standard 6 in my mind.
Yeah.
Because knowledge is power. And a lot of these guys, we realize almost 80% of them have less than second farm.
Wow.
And remember, right up to second farm, you really haven't decided your path.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's almost like you're at primary school level education still.
Have you guys, just thinking about it, I am actually seeing what we're talking about and trying to put myself in the situation of, the visiting and seeing what they go through. What are the conversations like with these guys sitting down, especially an offender which is for the first time? Are they saying, this is the reason why I had to do what I had to do? And what are the programs that they flock to the most at the Kolbe?
Well, first of all, there are some of them who will not ever.
They
won't tell their story, and even if they tell it, they won't tell the real deal.
They fabricate
Yeah,
whatever
they
they
will come
want.
up with something else because one of the things too we notice is that some of these little guys are actually working for the gangs. It is the gangs that set up the robberies and these burglaries, because remember that is how the gang generates some of their monies to keep afloat. And certainly they don't want to come to prison and to be identified as a particular gang member, so they try to hide that. Thank goodness the prison has a very effective intelligence service that really we kind of pin them down because we know their background and we have intelligence on who they affiliate with and who they are really working for, those kinds of things. So the intelligence is very key. But the programs, they don't necessarily have a choice with respect to the youngsters. The youngsters, they literally have to take part in whatever program is being offered at the facility, at the youth facility. When it comes to the adult prisoners though, they have a choice. If they are convicted, they have a choice to attend what you call a Ashcraft rehab program, which deals with your addiction, whatever that addiction is, whether it's gambling or using crack cocaine or marijuana, whatever that is, alcohol, you name it. That also addresses what you call behavioral issues. It does deal with anger issues, spiritual. It offers you spiritual teachings, so you could try and understand that you are powerless without God, that kind of thing. And then there is, like I said, the Remand Rehab Center that caters to mostly gang situations. You know, what is it like to get into a gang? You know, why do you join gangs? How can you get out back from a gang and those kinds of things? Anger management, because a lot of these guys are angry. Look at the killings in the streets by gangs. I mean, they're vicious. Sometimes one man takes 7 bullets, you know. One bullet is already dead, and then for you to shoot me 7 times, that's like overkill. So that shows you the ignorance and the arrogance and the madness with some of these guys. And then, so we have to look after those things.
The last time you were on here, you spoke of, and I can remember that conversation clearly, and some of the artwork and some of the cabinet work that these guys have been doing there. And you mentioned that, you know, if somebody is building a house and you want to make a purchase, you could actually do that. Is that still going on now?
Well, we're still producing the blocks, We're still doing all of these programs, and that is really to teach them a skill. You know, I said to the media when we built the tower, because we had that tower that we built, that is really their production. They built that from floor to ceiling.
Wow.
You know, I mean, and if you look at that, that's a fine piece of work.
It is.
You know, meet engineering standards too. So the public doesn't have to worry that it's going to tilt, because it won't.
And there it is. You know, what is the significance of having the tower now at the prison?
Well, the significance is that I am certain that we have a more secure prison right now. Anybody who would want to come and intrude or invade or try and escape, I think they will think twice right now, because that tower gives these guards a bird's eye view, and it covers a wide area. And I think looking at that tower, they'll think twice. They'll say, run the risk of getting shot. So they won't fool with it. That's for sure. So it's more secure. It's more of a deterrence for escapes, and certainly a deterrence from who wants to come in from the outside to probably extract a prisoner. I think they will think twice.
Do you have any success stories of guys who came out there? And we don't have to call any names, but in terms of business and what we've seen, do we have any success stories?
Oh, quite a number. I think I would have to actually put a list together. We have successful people who have turned managers now, really and truly, and you know, they've gone with employers who really have a lot of confidence in them and those kinds of things.
Do we invite them to tell their story into the...
Well, I have no difficulty. Actually, maybe we should work on putting a list of them together and let them show. As a matter of fact, there's one guy who builds cabinets on the outside. I had invited him to come to the prison, because we have a studio, like I said, and every so often we bring these ex-prisoners to come back and advise the ones that are in prison, to tell them what to do in order to survive on the outside.
Themselves for.
Not the end of life.
So Claire, while this conversation was supposed to be focused on reintegrating, what we've identified more so is the lack of facilities or structured programs to help with reintegration. Now, we know the stigma that exists. A lot of people are asked to produce police reports when they're going in for a job. If there's a business owner right now, small or large business, or an HR manager who's hearing this and saying, well, maybe I need to give some of these young men a chance. Can they contact you for, I mean, do you offer that? And how can, because as a business, or even as an HR manager, your job is also to protect the business and also the people you work with. So you need to have that guarantee. Where can they get that?
Well, certainly they can contact the prison. And what we do sometimes is we would write a letter of recommendation.
Okay.
But again, that is done when the prisoner asks for it.
Yes.
Because there are ex-prisoners who call and say, boss, I applied for a job, but can you write a letter of recommendation? So I would put my records department to draft it up.
Yeah.
And, you know, of course, we don't want to hide the fact that he was in prison.
Yeah.
You know, so we want.
Well, it's important for them to
so
disclose.
Right, it is important for them to disclose.
Yeah.
So I mean, for us to disclose that about the prisoner.
Yeah.
So I would do that, and I will put both his good and his bad while he was in prison. I mean, I would highlight the fact that you know, they took programs, and the programs addressed this, and those kinds of things. So we have no difficulty doing that, and we've done it in the past, and we have seen where employers have actually hired them, and
Wow.
they turn out to be some of the best employees.
Yeah.
I will let you know, the prison itself hires ex-prisoners, you know, because I have some guards dressed in uniforms, and they were inmates.
Yeah.
Hey, he who feels it knows it. Who could do a better job than them?
It's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
They know all the games the prisoners play.
Yeah.
So when they are approached to bring in drugs and bring in contraband, they know what to say.
Yeah.
They know where the loopholes are too. And just, you know, do you do a preparation program for when they leave?
Yes, we have particularly the ARC. They offer them sort of a pre-release program.
Okay.
In which they talk to them about, you know, how to hold on to a job, how to apply for a job, those kinds of things, how to prepare a resume, etc.
Okay.
So they do sort of a pre-release program, getting them ready for the outside world. What I will tell you though, the prison has a very disciplined and rigid employment structure, so to speak, because first of all, if a prisoner wants to work within the prison, whether it's construction or being a prefect or woodwork, whatever the case may be, we have them fill out what you call an inmate job application form. Just like any other person, you know, my name is so and so and so, my address is this, my building is this, in this case it's going to be the building where they're from, my skills are this, blah, blah, blah. And then it goes through a screening process. We look at the prisoner and we see what are the risks of having him employed in a particular area and the dangers. So if we look at that person and we check his background and say, oh, but he had escaped one time, well, you know, he can't work there. He can work somewhere else where there's a fence, but he can't work where there's no fence, that kind of stuff. Because they will use all of these things to try and escape. Because one thing in their minds is always escape, escape, escape. I think every prisoner is thinking about escape, no doubt about it. So, and then we have a system in place where work starts at 7. But it does not mean that you're going to be leaving your building at 7. It means that you should be on your work site at 7. And then it stops at either 3 or 4, depending on the work you're doing. And that is the schedule. That is the schedule. And then with the program buildings have a rigid system in that if you're to wake up at 5, then everybody is to wake up at 5. You're going to do devotion at 5:30, then everybody will do devotion at 5:30. So everything is controlled and monitored and implemented rigidly. So brushing of teeth takes place simultaneously by all. You know, taking a shower. So everything is really regimented, and we have to do it that way because prison is all about order, discipline, and control.
All right. I, you know, just like I mentioned, we talk about it. It comes to mind, but we're so glad that the Kolbe Foundation is actually trying to prepare these guys to reintegrate them into what society is for today. So, Mr. Virgilio Murillo, CEO of the Kolbe Foundation, thank you so very much. And we want to wish you and yours all the very best for the day.
Thank you.
All right, good. We are about to take a break, and when we come back, we will be talking with the Ministry of Health on World Pediatrics Day. So stay tuned. That's World Pharmacist Day. We'll be right back.